Hey guys, I just wanted to come on and talk a little bit about the Sarah Boone case again. I got to go yesterday. That's when Sarah took the stand, and that's really what I was interested in hearing about. I wanted to be there for her to take the stand, of course, and also for the closing argument. So I'll probably try to go back for those if I can make it. So just starting off, she did not take the stand for quite a while. It was because there was a stop where her attorney had to really fight for the self-defense to come in, the battered woman syndrome stuff, and that took a while, and it's so important that it did. I have to say that really changed everything. And the judge said his ruling was if there is a scintilla of evidence, then it can be included. And it's so important that it did, because it really, really changed a lot of things, I feel like, for Sarah. Being in the courtroom, when you see Sarah, have you ever seen anybody who you'll make like an assumption about them just by their mannerisms and kind of how they speak to people and things like that? That's Sarah. She looks one way. I mean, like you've seen her portrayed on TV. That's kind of how she comes off. But when she got on the stand, I have to say, she did really well. She was passive. She was, she had a quiet voice. She wasn't combative in any way. All the things that you might have expected from her. Because I really thought she would get kind of just eaten up on the stand. And she did pretty good. And, honestly, for me, she kind of turned me a little. She kind of changed my mind a little, but what really did it was the photographs. And if you've seen the photographs, you'll understand why. They were so graphic. They were terrible. And I was sitting behind her defense table's desk, and when they were deciding whether or not this would come into evidence, he was getting the photos out and he was kind of laying them across the table. Actually, Sarah was taking them and paper clipping them and stuff. So at that point, I don't know if they were supposed to come in or not. So from the table, you could see the photos, and they were bad. Especially when you see them up close. The brutal violence that had to happen to produce that, it kind of changed some things. There was a real shift there, because it was much different than seeing just a person sitting at a desk than to hear a person on the stand really, I feel like, connecting with the room. That's what I picked up. And people were intently listening to her, and she came off as normal. She came off as somebody who you would just see at the store, or work somewhere that you go to. I think Sarah does a good job at being what she needs to be at that time. And now, could that be manipulation? Of course, sure. I mean, she's going to be on her best behavior. The things that other people had to say, not so great. But you can see by their relationship that neither of them were, model citizens or anything. And I would expect when you're in that situation that you're not going to be at your best, when you're drinking all the time, when you're, in a domestic violence situation, people are probably not going to have great things to say. You're kind of at a bad point in your life. And Sarah's lawyer fought really hard to get that evidence in. And it's really good for them that he did, because it really, I feel, changed everything. There was a noticeable shift. He fights hard for her. He really does. They're all, everyone there is really good. I mean, even the court staff is good. The attorneys are trying their hardest. You can tell that he cares. I believe that he does. He gets shot down a lot. He does. So, he found a way, though, to get that in. The judge said if there's one scintilla of evidence of abuse that could be relevant to the case, that has a right to come in. And that, I think, is where everything kind of changed for them. Because before, I don't think it was going well for Sarah at all. I have to say. And just from what I saw being there, I didn't think that Sarah was very sympathetic at all. I know on the stand she's on her best behavior, and she's very soft spoken, and she seems intelligent. She's not a stupid person by any means, but you don't know how much of that is the real her or not. I mean, obviously her life was not at the best point when all this was going on. And when you have domestic violence, you have drinking, it doesn't make for the great, it's not going to be like the shining moments of your life. It's not going to be a great time. It's really hard to maintain such stress and anxiety, and I'm sure it was for them both. It is very interesting to be there and see kind of the inner workings and the things that they try to get in and the things that they can't get in and the things that they do outside the presence of the jury. They're all trying really hard, and her lawyers, like I said, they fight for her. What did they make of all this? I cannot help but think that those pictures don't make a huge difference. Like, they had an hour and a half for lunch, and I actually, when I was coming back up on the elevator, there were 2 jurors on the elevator, and there were just 4 of us in the elevator. And of course, you can't say anything to them, even remotely, about the case. And I think the only comment that we made was how big the elevator is. The elevator is like the size of a garage. It's huge. So, you just, but you wonder, I mean, when you're sitting there, what they're thinking, because ultimately it only matters what they're thinking, and, the judge as well. But I will say there was a real shift, noticeable in the courtroom when Sarah testified. I think she did as well as could be expected. For me, those pictures had changed a lot. It really, the pictures were so graphic. I mean, that black eye, the stitches in her leg. I don't know how we didn't know more about this before, but it kind of, to me, feels like that it was a good strategy to kind of just bring it out of nowhere. Because you're on a track thinking something and thinking, well, this is my opinion, this is the way it is. But that's why it's so important to be open-minded and listen to all the evidence, because there's 2 sides to every story. And no matter what, I know nobody was like great in this relationship, but a picture is worth 1,000 words, and can't really get past those pictures. They were absolutely disturbing. And it does make a difference. I mean, is it right to go and leave someone in a suitcase and allow them to suffocate? No. But I don't think she did that on purpose. I never have thought that. And I don't think a lot of people think that. I mean, I'm sure some do. But they just had a really dysfunctional relationship. And they both did, bad things. It really gives you insight into how someone who's living like that lives their life. The amount of fear and dysfunction you know, it shows you that when you're looking at it in someone else's life, nobody could love you that could do that. It's just, I mean, constant hypervigilance, constant worrying, constant, you know, being on your toes. Aside from the actual physical abuse, it's just, I don't see how that equates to love. I don't, you know, people that love you usually want the best for you. And I realize that people are flawed and they bring, you know, their own issues into relationships. But when there's no boundaries, when there's no line you won't cross, things like this happen. And, you know, one thing I don't understand, though, is, so what I kind of feel is that he got in that suitcase and she maybe got mad or something, but she, past the point of taunting him, really couldn't let him out, I feel like, right then, at least. Because if these kind of things had happened to her, the beatings, you know, all these terrible things that happened, then what was going to happen when he got out? In her mind, I'm thinking. So why would you go upstairs? To me, though, and I don't know if this is just because it had become so normal to her, why would you go upstairs and go to sleep? Because you're assuming, obviously, that he can get out. That's the one part I don't understand is, you know, if he gets out, he's gonna be really angry. How can you go fall asleep? I mean, I guess if you pass out drunk, you can't really help that you fell asleep, but I don't know. And then there's also that maybe she had gotten to the point where she was so complacent that it was so normal that she could fall asleep during that. I don't know. Maybe they got drunk and, you know, beat the crap out of each other and went to sleep all the time. I don't know. Maybe they decided to take a nap in the middle of everything. You know, when you're drinking, I guess you just can pass out, you know, no matter what's going on. But it really shows, like, the lack of self-preservation. When you look at those pictures, of course, everyone's going to be like, well, why'd you go back? Why'd you go back? There's many reasons. I mean, as we all know, there's many reasons people stay in that. I think that it was a bad relationship both ways. I will say, though, that I had some preconceived, you know, opinions just from what I'd seen on TV, what I saw on TV, and it really changed yesterday. It changed seeing those pictures, because, you know, if you're going to get physical, you kind of have to be ready for whatever someone else is going to do to you. You know, if you're going to cross that line, if you're going to cross that boundary, then you're going into a dangerous area where somebody might have to defend themselves. And that's not necessarily specific to this case, you know, because it wasn't a suitcase. I mean, in the beginning I was thinking, what's the imminent threat? He's zipped in a suitcase, and how's he going to get out unless you help him to get out? But, you know, do I think that she on purpose left him in there? No, I don't. I don't think most people think that. I never have thought that. Some people might think that, but I've never thought that. And I was like, why couldn't you just let the guy out of the suitcase? That's all you had to do. But there's so much more than that at play when you really get into it. You know, I guess at some point, when you've taunted the guy and you've made him upset and angry, you're wondering, can I let him out? You know, what's going to happen when I do let him out? And I'm sure, you know, she was thinking all those things, or maybe she wasn't thinking anything. Maybe she was just thinking she wanted to go to sleep and pass out. So, I don't know, some inside court stuff. Judge Kranick doesn't play around. If you are disruptive, if you, like, some guy had his ringer on and he let that guy know fast, turn that phone off. Some lady was also kicked out. I wasn't there for that part, so I don't know exactly what happened. But when Sarah started testifying, I don't know why, when I sit still, I get really tired, and I really hadn't had like a good night's sleep the night before. So I kind of started drifting off, and my head was kind of like, I was catching myself. So I did get up and leave while Sarah was testifying. I caught a lot of it, but I had to pick my daughter up anyway. I'm doing this like on my off time, so I can't be there, from the beginning to the end. But I was definitely afraid of getting called out for falling asleep. One thing too that I think is kind of hard to tell on camera is how small Sarah is, how short. I'm very tall, so I can kind of see, over people to her, and she's the shortest, standing there usually. She's, and thinking of her being with this other person who is, I believe, similar to her size, you would think, well, he's so little, what can he do? But she's so small too, and you can see by the pictures that, she obviously didn't just take that. I'm sure she, would try to defend herself or put her hands up, and still she got brutalized. I mean, you can't take that away from her in this. She was brutalized, and I had, watching Sarah at the table and watching her testify are two very different things. She did not come off well at the table in her actions and just the way that she, did things. But on the stand, that really changed a lot, I think, in this case. And it wasn't really, they had to fight about if it would even come in. And I think it's so important for her that it did. And, like I said, the judge said if there's a scintilla of evidence that could be connected to this case, that it deserves to be known. And for, if I was a juror there, I would be so upset if I'd never heard that. I don't think you can make a fair decision without all the facts. So the facts that we knew before were that, she zipped him in a suitcase and left him in a suitcase. And you're like, well, okay, she needs to be punished for that. But, this, it kind of puts a new light on things, just the dynamics of their relationship. And I have to say, I think so much of the jury, like what are they thinking, and what if there are people on the jury that have been through this, how traumatizing it has to be to, discuss these things again and to think of these things again. And, a lot of people have dealt with stuff like that. And it just really shows you that how bad a relationship can get, and that nobody that cares about you would ever want you to have a black eye like that, to have your leg sliced open, or to put you in a suitcase and taunt you. It's just, I don't know, it's a really good lesson, I think, for people that might be in that situation to say, I don't want to be the one sitting there at that table. But big takeaway for me on the whole day was that it really did make a difference. Her testimony really did make a difference. If she had never testified, I don't know that. I think she helped herself with the testimony. So that there was a real shift. There was. And I remember I was sitting by a lawyer on the first day, and we were just both like, why didn't she take the plea deal? Why? What is she thinking? And now, never know. You never know how it could work out. She could do much better than anticipated, or she could walk away with over 20 years. It's a gamble I would never want to take, but she's there now, and I don't know. I just think the important thing is to learn to never let it get to that point, and that violence like that escalates. It keeps going up and ramping up and getting worse and worse and worse, and you just have to remember that love is people wanting the best for you, and the best for you is not kicking you in the head and throwing you downstairs, and just that whole dynamic of for men or women, either way. But anyway, I think I'm going to go for the closing arguments. I don't think I'll go back until then. It's not like a packed house or anything, honestly, like you think it would be. But, and there's a lot of downtime, there's a lot of boring stuff, but I think the interesting thing is the jury. They seemed like such nice people. There's one lady in particular who, on the elevator, she was smiling and she was very kind, and so I think that they have a good group of people, it seems. I mean, they all seem to really listen. They all seem to take their job seriously, and it's just I would never want to be a juror. I just never would. I'd never want to be a judge or a juror. It's such a responsibility, and your opinion can put someone's life on an entirely different course. So I don't want to do that. It is interesting. It's interesting. I think like people should have to kind of go and see how the justice system works, and just to know that you will never want to be the one sitting there. It doesn't matter who it is. You just know. I mean, people are discussing your life. They're judging you. And they have your future in their hands. It's and another thing that was pretty strange too, is that the suitcase and the bat sit there in the courtroom. They stay there, and I really thought, I don't know if anyone else thinks this, but I think, I don't even like to look at it. I think of it as a murder weapon. It's, it's where someone died, so it's very strange that, something like that could happen so easily, and then all this would come from a night of drinking where two people just had the worst relationship possible. But it can time to go. Well, anyway, I will report back if I go to closing arguments. And I never usually ask this, but if you have gotten this far with me, if you could like and subscribe, that would help a lot. I'm trying to do this a little bit more. My daughter is, she's getting older now and stuff, and she's doing her own thing, and so I have a little bit more time for this, and I enjoy like the court aspect of it. So I'll just try to share anything I know about it. But anyway, you guys have a good day, and I'll talk to you later.